So today's episode, I'm sat with Yvonne, who is a client of mine, but we're talking about a journey that her son has had experiencing Lancashire TAAG and how he's gone from basically struggling in life to being diagnosed with autism and ADHD to joining up with Lancashire TAAG and Yvonne most recently organising an amazing charity walk of over 300 people and raising £20,000. Now, if you don't know anything about Lancashire TAAG, just have a quick look at this video and then we're going to get into the episode.
What gets me excited for the week ahead is knowing I'm heading to Lancashire TAAG. That little spark of excitement builds, knowing I'm going back to a place where I can challenge myself. From the moment I walked in, I was welcome, and honestly, it feels like coming home every single week.
TAAG was formed back in 2012 because I've got two children myself who are now grown up and they have a diagnosis of autism, autistic spectrum disorder and some other neurodiverse conditions, and I wanted to meet other families and understand it more, so we set up like a parent support group in the local area, and it just started there really.
I discovered TAAG because my son was encountering problems in out-of-school activities. Really, we needed an environment where people would understand that his behaviour wasn't bad behaviour. He's been able to come and regulate his senses with no judgment, and that's the reason why everybody else comes along.
So TAAG is completely funded by donations, fundraising, sponsorship and bids to other organisations such as Sport England, the National Lottery, the Co-op and many others. We're also a gift aid registered charity which adds a lot of money onto the amount of money we raise.
We want to offer an environment where our children can come and take part in activities that they might not be able to access anywhere else.
And we are on a Wednesday night every week, 48 weeks of the year, and we have now up to 22 volunteers.
The money that we raise is used to pay the rent on our current building, which is over £8,000 a year. We also use it to buy equipment such as climbing equipment, mats, and to subsidise the many trips we arrange to make them affordable for our families.
Yvonne, welcome to the DoTheWork Podcast.
Thank you very much.
Happy to have you. I think we're going to be having a really good conversation today. We're going to absolutely get into your health and fitness journey, but before that, talk about something that you've been doing recently, something that's really close to your heart, so to speak. You've been doing some amazing fundraising. So do you want to tell us about, I suppose, first of all, let's go back to where the journey started. You did some amazing fundraising recently and raised, where are you up to at the minute?
Just over 20,000.
Which is absolutely incredible. But before we get to the event and stuff, tell us what started that journey. Why did you get involved with this charity? Just talk us through it.
Okay, so probably going back maybe 5 years. We as a family was literally at crisis, at breaking point. Rhys was within the system for the autism ADHD pathway. We were struggling at school. We were struggling just to generally be able to meet his needs. And we was desperate asking for help on schools, and there just wasn't the support there. Rhys himself would go to clubs, so he would, because the boys at school were doing football, he'd go to football, but they couldn't meet his needs, so we'd be met with, I'm really sorry, but we've tried, this isn't for him. Then he wanted to do the boxing, explain to the guy at the boxing, this is him, this is his struggles, to which we was reassured that they could meet it. We went back and told, don't bring him back, he's just spent the whole session hugging the punch bag. And I guess it's disheartening. There wasn't anywhere that he could actually go to, and he struggled with communication. He didn't form friendships as such. We was lucky that he was in a school with very small class sizes, but what had then happened as he got older and his differences had become more apparent was that they became his carers. So he was a child that went to the party when the whole class went to the party, but he wasn't invited. He wasn't invited to it when it was the boys. He wasn't invited to tea because he was different to the other children. And that struggle became sort of more, he became sort of more recluse. We was very lucky. We'd spoken to him, he would tell you that he had 20 friends because he had 20 children within his class. Ultimately, he had 20 carers. And I guess we are lucky, the children out there that have got the same needs as Rhys, that didn't have that support, and they can be targeted. So we was lucky in that respect. But he didn't have that social outsource. He didn't have anywhere that he could go to. I happened one day to bump into some old friends when we was talking. And it turned out that their children were also neurodiverse, and they recommended that we should try Lancashire TAAG. Their children had been going, and they said it was just life-changing for them. They'd both become volunteers themselves, and so that's where our journey started. As I say, we were 4 years by this point into the pathway of a diagnosis. There was no diagnosis because there was no funding as such at the time. We was just very, very lost, very broken. And we went to Lancashire TAAG. Rhys attended, and TAAG's about the children being themselves. So he went and he could just be him. There's no judgment. There was no questions. He went in there. They had rebound therapy. They have a climbing wall, and ultimately they do sports as well. The children decide what they want to do. They can move around freely, and they are them. There's no questions. He went and there was no, we can't meet needs. So that was huge for Rhys. That was a big turning point for him. But for us as a family, they have got a fantastic team of volunteers. Those volunteers, they led us on the journey. So we went from a child who had no help, no support, school was struggling to meet needs, and with their support, we was able to basically fight the very broken systems. We ended up, we got the diagnosis. Ultimately, we did have to admittedly pay private, but that was because we started running out of time, and we knew that we needed that to get him into high school. But with the help and the support of TAAG, and this is the one thing that I say, I did this event, it's raised 20,000+, which is huge, but ultimately I can't physically put a value to the support that we've had as a family. And through that, they supported us. We did have to go down the pathway where we had to get the MP involved, and there's been battles through the school system, getting the right provision, getting the right medication for him. There's local authority, the NHS commissioning care that wouldn't accept the private diagnosis, even though before I'd paid for it, I made sure it was gold standard. So I asked the questions, would it be accepted? But when we got that and we got that diagnosis, we was told that unfortunately in our area, it wasn't going to be accepted. This child was desperate to try the medication path. And again, quite naively, when he'd originally been referred before I started at TAAG, he was only actually referred for autism. I was very, very naive, and I think that's why we were desperate to get the support. I remember having a conversation with school once they said, I don't feel like you need parenting courses. And I remember saying to the Senko, I do. We don't understand it. We don't have any children in the family. We're lost. We hadn't asked for an ADHD diagnosis. I was under the impression that when they did the autism diagnosis, that's a neurodiverse condition, and it would kind of cover different aspects, and we would get an outcome as to his needs. I realised when we contacted the private providers that wasn't the case, and with the support of the volunteers at TAAG. So where Rhys was before he started the journey with TAAG was we had obviously school took quite a while to get his EHCP. I think that in itself took sort of over 5 years. They were lost. And we had specialists that came down to do the EHCP report. But what they were telling us was that we feel this child has got global development delay. There was never any mention of ADHD. They'd mentioned from quite early on that they thought there was autism there. And again, I think that's part of our journey, that when it was mentioned in school, he was in reception. It hasn't been the best journey. I remember his teacher referring to him in reception. He said to us, he's such a sweet child. I like to refer to him as our very own Rain Man. Again, for a parent to hear that when you've not got a diagnosis, it's difficult. Like, the whole journey is difficult. So for us, we got the support, and it was the volunteers. I say volunteers, we've got some highly qualified families and volunteers at TAAG. And it was one that said, this ADHD diagnosis that he's got is massive. You need to go down the route of medication. And I think by that point, because when he was in reception, we was kind of told by his consultant, he's too young to diagnose, he had hearing loss. And then you cling on to the hope that we fixed his hearing. We need to give it a couple more years before we make that decision. Nobody wants to hear that their child's got autism. You want your typical child. Sorry. We was clinging on to the hope that we fixed his hearing, give it a couple more years now for him to catch up in his education, and life's going to be great again. I think there comes a point where, and that was a struggle for us, that you have to accept that wasn't the case. We had this diagnosis, and we was told, I think you need to start, before you start looking at skills for a child with global development delay, you need to start getting him medicated. For us, we'd found it sort of difficult to accept that maybe, the early sort of questions were actually correct. We lived in that hope that we would fix his hearing and everything would fix itself and he would start to catch up. We obviously, we got to the stage where we was being told that it was possibly global development delay. I think by this point, we were still fighting to get sort of the medication. We were starting to look at sort of high schools. We knew that we had to start the battle. It's not a quick process. We knew we needed to start collecting all the evidence. And again, it was the volunteers at TAAG that was helping us along the journey, people that have lived it, people that are qualified in it. And we was advised, you can't make a decision at this point. You need to get the medication for him. There was one particular volunteer that said, I see it all the time. I'm not saying it's a miracle, it doesn't work for everybody, but ultimately there are children that are on the right medication with the ADHD diagnosis, life can look very, very different. There was sort of the questions of what I see at these sessions. Obviously by this point, Rhys had been sort of attending for a couple of years. And they'd been on the many battles to get to that stage. We was kind of told that what I see, I believe that the global development delay might be the wrong sort of pathway, and maybe that isn't quite the case, and maybe it is the ADHD. And again, school, they did their best. They, in the last few years, they were very, very good with Rhys, and they did everything to try and meet the needs. They were quite open that they struggled and that they didn't really have the facilities, but they did everything that they could while we fought the system, and they helped us in any way that they could. We got Rhys onto medication, and from being 5 years behind his peers, within the space of... So that was in year 5 when he started his medication. And by the time he was in year 7, just coming towards the end of year 7, we was advised by school that Rhys is working at year 7, the lower side, but he's working at year 7 standards, working towards GCSEs. That for me is just, I remember saying to this particular volunteer at TAAG when we talked about it, and I said, I've had the dream, I've wished that everything was going to fix itself. Like, I don't believe in miracles, and I was reassured, just try the medication. And I was doubtful. We'd been there, I'd had the false hopes. I was ultimately, in my head, this child would need a lot more support and that we wouldn't get the right school. And I think that the journey that they went on, helping us fight for the medication, ultimately helping us get the right high school, and getting him to where he is. Like, life without TAAG would probably be a child that maybe would still be looking at global development delays, still maybe, about not knowing about medication, not understanding ADHD. And again, quite naively, to me, ADHD is that child that's bouncing around the room. When we grew up, ADHD was, the badly behaved child. And that wasn't Rhys. Rhys was a child that he would... if anything, he was quite withdrawn. He definitely wasn't the child that was bouncing around the room, and he certainly wasn't badly behaved. He had, and again, another diagnosis came through TAAG, was that he has quite severe anxiety, and he couldn't break the rules. He would get very, very upset if somebody broke the rules. He would fall out with peers at primary school if they played Fortnite, because it wasn't age appropriate. He'd been told by his teacher that you shouldn't be playing Fortnite. These kids are year 5 and 6. These kids are playing Fortnite, and the children had to ultimately pretend to Rhys that they didn't play Fortnite. I remember him finding out about one of the girls in his class had been playing Fortnite, and his response was, do your parents not love you? Why would they neglect you and let you play Fortnite? It's and again, at the time, it was just like, oh my goodness, that's Rhys. And what we didn't realise was that was actually the anxiety. He was trying to put the world, he was trying to help in his mind, make the world make sense. So everything had to be very, very black and white, very sort of, you got a rule, you stick to that rule. So the children with the ADHD, when, what I would have thought back to my era, he didn't fit that criteria at all. Like, he could not break a rule. But ultimately, we got the right schooling, we've got the right medication, and here we are. He's now coming to the end of year 8. His ambitions for the future, he fully intends to do his GCSEs. He's then planning on doing A-levels. He is obsessed with Cyprus. He has found UCLan in Larnaca. He's already been on the website. He can tell you exactly how much computer engineering degree is. He can tell you all about the student accommodation, and he can also tell you about the funding pathway through the UCLan at Preston, but ultimately it's UCLan Larnaca that he intends to go to. So that's when I say before about, the £20,000 it's huge for us as a charity, but for me to be able to put a value on the support that not only Rhys, he's part of that club. He's got somewhere he goes to every week. On his video, he says, I felt like I was home. It's the support that he has, but it's also the support for us as a family. We was left, we didn't understand the system, we didn't understand the pathway, we didn't understand our child. It's as simple as that. But with the support, with the sessions that they have in sort of helping and coaching parents, we have a very, very, very different outlook for Rhys. And it's not just about the parent support, it's not just about the weekly sessions. We go this weekend, we're off to the Sandcastle, so we have days out as well. We have got a inflatable 5K in a couple of weeks for the children to raise money as well. We're doing, there's a few of the children that are going out up at Three Sisters with another charity that's offered us some places, and they're going to be driving cars on the track at Three Sisters. Those places have been given to, I say children, they're young adults, but ones where their needs are quite complex and where they won't be in a situation where they will be able to get that driving licence. So they've got that opportunity to go with specially trained people in the cars and ultimately have that feeling of driving. So it's... The actual TAAG Trail Ale came from a weekend that we did up at Calvert Trust, and again it was all the families. We hired out the whole adventure centre, and the children took part. Everything, though, all the children's needs were met, and we did all kinds of activities from the zip lining, caving, canoeing. It was a full adventure weekend, but it was made so that every child's needs, it was adapted to the children to make sure that they could enjoy the full weekend. It was on that trip that I was talking to Joanne, who's our founder, and we was just talking about what can we do next year to raise money. And I mentioned that I'd seen a number of friends and a lady I worked with that had been on these charity pub walks, that they were getting really quite popular, and each one that I'd seen seemed to bring in a lot of funds towards these charities, much needed funds. So it was kind of just a throwing about suggestion, to which Joe then said to me, like, I think that's a great idea. You've suggested it, you can organise it. And that's kind of where it started. Initially, I was thinking, she's joking. Never organised a big event in my life. I wouldn't know where to start. She's not serious. That was in September. And then I remember sort of coming up to the Christmas period, and she said to me, how are you getting on organising the pub walk? At that point then, it became real that this wasn't just a half-hearted conversation. This was actually something that she was generally thought it was a great idea and had handed over the reins to myself as such. And that's where TAAG Trail Ale kind of was created.
Okay, so there's a lot there. You've made it the easiest podcast ever for me because I can just sit here and listen. But obviously it's a hell of a journey that you've been on. Going back sort of to the beginning, I've had very little or no exposure to neurodiversity in terms of my family and stuff like that. So I think most people have, right? So they don't have much of an understanding of it. And just fast forward into the bit where you started talking about medication. There's quite a lot of, I don't know why, but there's quite a lot of people within the fitness industry that I'm aware of that have done quite well for themselves that have ADHD. And they've managed to channel it in a certain way to make it beneficial for them to work for themselves and do their own thing. And they've found ways to help them, hyper focus on stuff and all of that. But one guy recently, I heard him talk about, it might be on a YouTube video or something like that, how he's like similar age to me, so like 35-ish. He's only just started using meds, and the difference for him is just insane. Like, he can sit and focus and concentrate on work, do some stuff in front of the laptop for, hours on end, like, what a typical person would be able to do, or what have you, or neurotypical, I think is the right term, isn't it?
Yeah.
And he's like, this is amazing. Like, and he was talking to the other guy who also has ADHD, who hasn't come across these meds as far as I'm aware. And he's like, you got to do this. You got to get on this type of thing. Weird way to phrase it, but but it just massively helped him. So it's clear, like you say, in Rhys's experience, that it's massively helped him. But you had to push really hard to get access to that and get a diagnosis and stuff, which is sad, isn't it?
It is. It's a very sad system. And as I say, we ended up with the MP involved. We did get a letter back apologising for all the failures, and I think off the top of my head there was 14 counts that they accepted that they'd failed Rhys. And they promise that, changes will be made. I don't know if I like to think that changes will be made, but there's lots of parents coming to us today at TAAG that are on that similar journey, that on that similar pathway, they're dealing with the same struggles. So it's, has it changed? I don't know. I'd like to think that it is, that there are improvements and that it is going to improve, because, as I say, we was a very broken family, and you wouldn't want to think of anyone going through that. And if by us standing up for it, if that helps others, that's great. But it's interesting you say about talking to somebody. And again, it's probably sort of part of the learning curve. We now understand why Rhys has his needs. So he has got a dual diagnosis of autism and ADHD. We look at the genetics, and, Mum felt like I managed quite well through life also. I thought I'm at that age where women get to, everyone talks about now, perimenopause, and it became quite clear for myself that I had been able to mask, and I've recently been diagnosed with ADHD, and I've just also started on the medication pathway. Probably that medication pathway, the ADHD, the hyperfocus, is how this event became such a success. It was that ability to hyperfocus, be able to tune into something that I really enjoyed. And then again, we look at Dad, and Dad now says, now that we understand autism and ADHD, Rhys got his autism traits from his dad, and obviously the ADHD was from Mum. So I think we probably grew up in a generation where it wasn't necessarily understood, and it's only sort of now that we're understanding and we're able to kind of look at and take the positives from it. Like, as I say, the event that we've just done was phenomenal, but it was probably it's almost like, as Rhys says it, Rhys will tell you that he has superpowers because he can hyperfocus. So it's certainly not negative, and I would never change who he is. It's just having that support and that understanding to be that, say, we were once that family is, why is it my child? Why are we in this situation? But with the support, with the right journey, we're privileged to have the child that we've got, and we've got a massive understanding of who we are as well, through the journey that we've taken with Rhys.
It's a great way to look at it, and great that you've managed to get to that point. So the event itself then, tell me about, what is it? What was the setup of it? How did it work? How many people? All of that. So, as I say, I'd never organised an event, certainly not an event of this size. As I say, I realised at Christmas that this isn't going away. This is something that I'm almost being relied on to bring this together. So my first point was, where do I start? We have a home in Coppell, and that the children attend on a Wednesday night. We've just recently opened at Clayton Green, and that's where we're needing quite a lot of funding at the moment to bring together what we need at Clayton Green. We don't have the climbing wall that we have at Coppell, and ultimately we couldn't meet all the families' needs. We had a huge waiting list, so we needed more to be able to offer more nights, hence were sort of the two leisure centres come in. So then I kind of thought, we're in our early stages. We're just opening Clayton Green. How about we bring this together, the two venues? So I remember somebody said to me that does the charity walks, if you're going to do charity pub walk, it needs to be picturesque, try and keep it off the road, and just,
it's a pub walk, lots of pubs. So then the planning came into place. How do I get from, let's look at, Coppell to Clayton Green? How are we going to get that? How are we going to make that picturesque? And so, again, hyper-focusing, sort of quite a few hours probably went with me looking at different maps. Do we go through Astley Park? Do we go through Kewarden? And then ultimately I kind of picked up on the canal and thought, who doesn't like walking along a canal? It's a beautiful scenery, and pubs along canals are a lovely place to be. So that was sort of where the walk itself came from. I knew sort of the Claytonley Woods side. I wasn't very familiar with the Coppell side. So at that point, I remember being off at Christmas. That was my ultimate time that I had, because I was off work, was to find where I was going to put this walk. So I remember enrolling with one of my friends, one of my good friends from Chorley. She lives near Birkacre, around Coppell area. She was the perfect person to guide me through to get me to that canal. Once I was on the canal, I knew that I could obviously continue the rest of the walk and map it out. Then it was going to the pubs. Again, I had no idea how this event was going to turn out. Was it just going to be a couple of the families, a couple of volunteers, and their families and friends? So initially I kind of went to the pubs, obviously asked them if they'd be interested, and my aim was 100 people. I remember kind of thinking, I put the tickets on sale, sort of thinking if I can get 100 people to do this, and maybe we could make sort of 5,000, that would be awesome. That would be a fantastic event. The tickets went on sale, and then I kind of had the idea of, why not use the social media, the likes of Facebook? Let's get it out there. The more people that see it, the more people that will join it. And yes, they won't know who we are, sort of the charity, but then that helps us get across to the other families. You speak to people now, and most people know somebody who's struggling within the system that don't know where to turn to. So it kind of combat both. It was, we'll aim it at sort of the general community, local communities, but at the same time they get to then know about who we are as well, and it gives us exposure, as well as obviously ultimately the more people that are on the walk, the more funds that we're going to raise. So the 100 very quickly sold. The 100 went to 200. And I remember each time going back to all the pubs to say, can I have another 100? Can I have another 100? We got to 200. And again, I had to go back and ask the question, can I now have more? The pub, one particular pub that was going to get all of the people kind of together was saying like that's it now, 300 is absolute, it's your first year, absolute limit on that. So that's kind of where my tickets came from. So by this point I've now got a route, I've sold tickets. It was then a case of I'd already decided that we needed t-shirts. T-shirts just, they help people see us if we're all in groups. And I knew that it'd be a great way to sort of get the donations in as well. So then I had to design the t-shirts. Then from there, it was a case of now we need maps. So it was designing the maps. It was almost, in my mind, I was going through sort of a checklist of how I can make this. I was really, really lucky that one of the pubs was very good friends with a lady who does one of the big charity walks in Chorley. So again, I met with them and they advised on what's worked. They've been doing it for 10 years. What, worked for them and what didn't, and where it could go wrong. So it was almost like we was a couple of years ahead of sort of the first year, because we had the privilege of the experience of somebody who does it year in, year out. And then kind of my walk was almost sort of wrapped up as such. I had my maps, I had my tickets sold. Then I decided, we need a raffle, let's have a raffle. So then again, it was going out and sort of approaching businesses. making them aware of who we were and asking for the donations to just make it bigger. And it literally did just kind of snowball from this, can I get 100 people? Can I make 5,000? To we've got 300 people. I actually had a waiting list in the end for people that was wanting tickets. I think somebody mentioned that there was over 100 people on that waiting list. And there are people that actually, they'd gone on, they'd seen they were sold out, but they'd then filled in the details. So I'm kind of blown away. I think on the day I was just, the overwhelm to when it actually happened was just on another level. The feedback that I've had, people, one of the pubs was saying that it's the most organised pub walk that they've had. It's my first year. I've never done anything like this.
Big pat on the back.
As I say, it's just about, for me, it was always about giving back because TAAG's changed our life, because of where Rhys is. Like, his future is just so different that it was constantly, can I push it that little bit further? Can I, how can I make it better? How can I? And ultimately, I think it was quite a successful day. So I've already contacted some of the pubs, and ultimately I'm already kind of in preparation for next year. On the walk, people was telling me, the friends do the other walks, the other big walks, and they were doing it to see if it was any good, to see if it was organised, and they were saying that their friends are also going to be doing it next year.
So there are people that are like, professional pub walkers that came to rate it.
Yes, yeah. And they were saying to us, like, this is fantastic. I can't believe it's your first year.
It's like a hobby doing pub walks.
I feel like it is. Yeah. I have friends on my social media, and this is ultimately where kind of the idea came from, that literally I swear that's all they do.
Well, if you sell to most English people, right, you can walk a mile, then you can go to a pub and you're going to go to 10 of them, so you're going to have 10 drinks. It's probably quite an easy sell to a lot of people. So it's a great thing for a charity thing, to be fair. And on the numbers, I remember telling you, like, if just a couple of days before, one of my other clients was like, oh, what are you doing at the weekend? I was like, whatever I was doing, I can't remember. What are you doing? Oh, I'm doing this charity walk on Saturday. I'm like, oh yeah? He's like, where is it? He's like, yeah, it finishes up here. I was like, oh right. Like, we hadn't had the conversation that obviously I worked with you and you were organising and he was going. That just shows that somehow he was connected to, I think it was one of the other ladies at TAAG or what have you that he was going to, but it just shows how connected this is and how much it's sort of brought people together. You had a couple of special guests as well, didn't you?
We certainly did. Thank you very much.
That's all right. So, but just good, again, that just helps share the message out to more people, and then it's great that you're already thinking about doing it next year, and the fact that you did 4 times what your target was in terms of donations, fundraising, what have you, is amazing.
Yeah, it was an amazing event. And again, people that you speak to, even the pubs, they were saying what a fantastic atmosphere it had, how friendly everybody was. And again, I kind of used that opportunity because I knew that there was people that didn't really know, as you say, they do the pub walks. They weren't overly worried what the charity was about. So I knew that there was people that didn't know what the funds were for. For them, it was a nice day out with the friends. They were going to enjoy a few pints, a nice walk. So I did at the end pub. I played the video. You've seen the video yourself about who TAAG is, what we're about. And I thought, people of 10 pints in, there's not going to be that much interest. If I get a couple of people that kind of see it and maybe they can tell their family, if they see anybody another family that they know are struggling, that they could make them aware of. And ultimately, I was a little bit overwhelmed, so I kind of missed the opportunity, but I really wish that it was something that I'd actually recorded, because to see the amount of people that were in that pub, not one person spoke while that video played. It was on the big screen outside, the big screen inside, ultimately the screens for playing the football that night, and just the silence while everybody fixated and watched that video. People came up to me at the end, they were crying, saying, that it had really kind of pulled on the heartstrings, that, and again, people was coming afterwards saying that anything that I do events, but any event I do now, I'm going to be looking at sort of donating to Lancashire TAAG, because it's just, that video was just amazing, and it kind of, it's so crucial to so many people. I've already had people offering me raffle prizes for next year.
I've heard about these raffle prizes. They're good.
Yes. And again, like I say, it's just escalated. So ultimately, next year, where will we be? I'd certainly
20 pubs, 20 drinks. No, I think it's great to see, and like you say, even the 20 grand in itself is amazing, but that many people being exposed to that video and then the day and then telling people about it, it's going to go beyond the 20 grand that you've raised on that day or for that event, isn't it? You're going to get much more from it, and like you say, businesses wanting to sponsor and get involved and stuff like that as well, which is what it's all about at the end of the day, and that's all from your idea and your organising, so you do deserve a big pat on the back from that. So
thank you
from me, and make sure you give yourself one as well, and hopefully you've had one from the powers that be. But it does sound like obviously a lot of good work is done by TAAG, and this helps just put that message out a little bit more, and that's why these conversations are so important at the end of the day, for more people to find out about it, because it is something that most of us don't have exposure to or understanding of, and maybe we won't have that much more understanding of it, but it's a little bit more awareness, and then we can at least contribute to TAAG or what have you. So yeah, just a massive well done from me, really, for organising what seems to be a very, very successful event, and maybe is now going to be an annual thing.
It certainly looks like it's going to be an annual event. So, but yeah, it certainly helped with some friends of yours. They also got the word out there as well. So I wouldn't have that without yourself.
Hopefully they'll be back next year. I don't know what their whereabouts are and stuff, but yeah,
we're already pushing to try and get them back with Robert.
Right.
The amount of people that have said, imagine the three of them on the pub walk.
Yeah.
So, I've dropped the hints. I don't think they'll take me up on it, but I've dropped the hints. No, so, but...
you don't have to drink to have a good time.
No, that's exactly what Tay said. He can have some sparkling water in each pub.
Yeah. A few Coke Zeros and coffees and what have you.
I think it'd be very interesting. It's sort of, his thoughts on walking between pubs. I mean, who even walks between pubs in America?
They're probably like 100 miles apart or something.
That's it.
They don't have pubs, so they have bars.
That's it. It's and canals, just in general. I think it's sort of a very unusual event, to say the least.
Yeah. No, that'd be really cool if you made that happen. Taylor's mentioned a few times about you'd love it here because he could just come and train on his own and not have to talk to anyone, and he'd just do loads of pull-ups and press-ups and whatever.
It's
actually I'd really love to make that happen. So maybe we can tie that in.
Maybe
together.
Between us we can get that sorted.
Bring it together. So to tie this part off now, again, obviously amazing achievement in what you did. Where can people find out more about TAAG? Obviously we'll put all this stuff in the notes below. But A, if people want to make a donation, or B, if someone has a child or knows of a child that maybe needs a little bit of extra support that you guys offer, where should they go for that?
So we've got the link still on the Just Giving, which I'll send to you. So that's still open for donations, which again are greatly received. And then again, the Lancashire TAAG website. And if anyone is struggling, if they follow through onto the website, there's a form on there that they can fill out that will give them sort of a registration as such. We do have families that are registered, and the sessions aren't maybe for their children. They're a bit older, or and I say that we've got children in the teens, late teens. We've got young adults that attend. We are doing more at the moment as well for social events. That's something that we've now started to bring in, as well as having, we have a Tigers event that's on every 2 weeks at one of the play centres for the younger children. So again, we're just expanding all the time. But if that social club isn't right for a particular child, they can still register. They can still attend our days out. So there's lots of options available to them. And again, we've got the TAAG support group for parents that once they're registered, they can join. And on there, that's where we'll put on if there's any training sessions or anything that, you know, they're not aware of because maybe their children don't come on a weekly basis.
Amazing, yeah. So I'll put all that below, website, social media links, and then people can have access to that. And then we can put an email address or your email address or whatever, and then people can get in touch with you. So, yeah, amazing. Thank you very much for coming in and sharing that story.
Yeah.
Much appreciated. And again, massive well done.
Thank you.
Great achievement.